Israel is really it's an enchanting place. It's a place filled with the historical, the biblical. There is a special presence of God that I've never experienced anywhere else in the world. When we read the scriptures now, it just comes to life because you saw that place, you understand more of the background of what you're reading, and your faith just grows and deepens through that. One particular couple that I talked to since we've been back, Daryl and Jan Louder, they shared with me that the Lord has really spoken to them through going to Israel, that He has really called them to go into full-time missions work through that. So I think that's a pretty significant thing that God did there.
We were given the option to go out to the South Shore and participate in a baptismal of the Sea of Galilee, and that's where we both were baptized. And for me, it was really an incredible epiphany that we were to go and serve and love thy neighbor as ourselves.
Our first step will be to go to the University of the Nations in Kona, Hawaii for a 5-month training. And from there, our long-range goal is just to be able to be free financially and from the details of everyday life, to be able to go where He wants us to go, stay and serve as long as He wants us to stay there, and move on when He says to move on to the next.
When you get off the plane in Haiti, probably the first thing that you're hit with is the heat and humidity, just instantly. Sweat just starts pouring. And then you start smelling just a constant odor that permeates in Haiti is the burning trash everywhere. And it's just a kind of a sweet, putrid kind of a smell. It's really hard to describe, and you just smell that everywhere you go in Haiti. Trash everywhere, just trash everywhere, piled high. People everywhere, people on the streets, because none of them are working. The 80% unemployment in Haiti, and then it's just kind of chaos. The streets are full of potholes, and we even got stuck on one street going up because it was like literally going up a Jeep road in the middle of the city. You can just see the burden that life in Haiti is like. And when we drove through some of the most impoverished areas like Cité Soleil, where you see people everywhere and the raw sewage in the streets, and again the trash everywhere, and people just wearing almost rags as they're walking around. I don't know how people survive there. Well, when we drove into the orphanage, they had all of the kids on the front porch and they sang us a song. And you could see all the kids from the young on up to the older up there singing, and they looked happy, they looked healthy, and there was a sense of order in how they managed the kids. It was really actually pretty amazing to see that as a first impression. Never in my wildest dream would I ever go to Haiti for anything except to go work in the orphanage and to visit anyone that we're adopting. So I would recommend anyone that would even have an inkling of possibility of adopting someone from a child from Haiti to go to the orphanage. It will wreck you, and your heart will never be the same. I think that the more I read the scriptures, this is the heart of the Father, that He has deep concern for the orphans, for those in poverty, for those in need, and He gives us so much so that we can bless others. And I think the more we do that, the more He's going to bless us here. Okay, that's my message. Let's pray.
Welcome back.
Hey, great to be back. You know where, thank you. Wizard of Oz and Dorothy clicks her heels and says, "There's no place like home. There's no place like home." Boy, do I resonate with that. After going to Haiti, I was so glad to be home. And you guys, we just are so blessed to have such a wonderful church here. And you guys are amazing, amazing friends and family. And we appreciate all the prayers and also support that you guys have given us over the past couple of weeks that we were on our missions trip. And as you saw from the video, what a contrast of two worlds I was able to experience over the past 3 weeks. Going to Israel, it's modern, nice roads, clean drinking water, fresh fruit and vegetables, incredible food at the hotels we stayed at, and then all of the biblical sites that we got to go to, and the guide that we had was an amazing teacher. It was kind of a weird thing that she's a Jewish woman that grew up in New York City, went to Israel to become a tour guide, and so she's very versed in the Old and New Testament and how it relates to the biblical sites, and she would teach us from the scriptures from the Old and the New Testaments, and she wasn't a believer. But man, could that woman teach, and God just opened my eyes to the scriptures in even a greater way than the first time that I went to Israel. So that was a great, rich, and filling time for the team of 22 that went to Israel. We had a great time, and it was really fun getting to know the folks that went. So then I fly back with the team from Israel, and I meet the other team coming from Haiti as I flew down to Florida and met them there. And as you saw in the video, when you go into Haiti, you're just overwhelmed with the poverty, the despair, the stench, and the spiritual darkness is just unbelievable. And you just can't put into words what it's really like. And just think of the worst thing that I've ever experienced and just multiply it by 10, and that's the way Haiti was. And I just want to make note that our vision for Canyon View is to encounter God, to encounter others, and to encounter the world. And one of the best ways that I know of to help people in the church to go and encounter the world is to take them. Is to take them to places like Israel, where the people that were there, like you saw with Daryl and Jan Louder, their lives were dramatically changed. And then going to Haiti, the team that went, phenomenal team, the best missions team that I have ever been on, their lives were changed. And you just can't do that by showing videos and having a group discussion about it. There is something about going that impacts a person with the things of God's heart and their kingdom that I feel like as leader of this church to continue to instill God's heart for the world, that periodically we got to take people to the world. So with that takes me away sometimes. But what a great thing that we have incredible teachers that can fill in, can pitch hit for me. That we had guys like Glenn Brown and June Fellhauer and Nate and John Jessup last weekend. You know, I think in many ways it's helpful for all of us to hear God speaking to us from other people, right? And we grow from that. So in Israel, as I talked about, one thing I really appreciated is many of you prayed for our group as through the whole time that we were gone. We never experienced any situations in Israel, and also when we went into Jordan, go to Petra, never any sense of being in danger in any way. It was just one of the most peaceful experiences that a person could experience going into Israel. And Petra was one of the highlights, and you see a picture here of our group at Petra, and that is, because it's a group picture, you only see the base, but this is
one of the most famous structures at Petra that is literally carved out of sandstone. Now, this was 500 BC that these were carved out of the rock, and I just couldn't wrap my mind around was, what did they use to do that? These structures are like 4 or 5 stories high. And it just amazed me, the ingenuity of the men of that age, that they were able to carve these magnificent structures out of the cliffs. And this is an area that many theologians have summed up, or they believe that the prophecy in the Old Testament of 144,000, the remnant that will be preserved by God during the last part of the tribulation, this is where they'll go. That God will take them to Petra, and he will sovereignly, supernaturally protect them and provide for them while they're there. So it was really kind of neat to walk around and just use my imagination. Man, what's it going to be like if this is the place to actually be there during that period? Petra was really amazing. It's one of those places, they call it one of the 7 wonders of the world. If you ever get a chance to go to Jordan, you got to go to Petra. So anyway, we hope, as Lord willing, in a couple years to take another team to Israel on another tour. So if you would feel a desire in your heart or calling into your heart to do that, start saving your money. It's worth every cent. Well, going back to Haiti. Holy cow. Haiti, many of you may not know this, is the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. The government has a long history of incredible corruption. And all of the money and the aid that is sent to Haiti from other countries, almost all of it is just siphoned off by the administration, the government. And very little is passed down to the people. And you can tell by being there. They have deforested all of the mountains in Haiti. What the people do is, because they don't have really electricity, they can't afford stoves, they cut down trees and they make it into charcoal, and that's how people cook. Again, the pollution and the smell in the air is just things constantly burning. And then there's the extreme poverty of 80% of the population being unemployed. The most extreme poverty that you can ever imagine. You see little kids walking around that literally have orange hair because of the malnutrition. Very little infrastructure in the city that we were in Port-au-Prince. Definitely no safe drinking water. It's supposed to be one of the most contaminated water coming out of faucets in the world. The power, the electricity, they pay their power bill every month, but it came on like maybe a minute a day. And I asked Linda, the orphanage director, why do you keep paying the electricity bill if you're not getting any power? And she says, well, if it ever does come on, if we don't keep paying for it, they're never going to give it to us. Isn't that crazy? Inadequate sewage, there's raw sewage going down the streets. And the health care, dismal. Very little health care. Just the few people that could afford it, they're the only ones that get it. Most of the people line up at the community hospital basically to die. This one experience just wrecked me. We went to see this community government-sponsored hospital. And so we went in through the gates, and we're driving up this driveway, we're going to the back to go to the pediatric ward. And there's a woman literally lying in the street as we're driving up, and I'm captivated by this scene of what's this woman doing lying on the street, and people are just walking around her, not even giving any attention. And right as we're driving up to her, she's pushing herself up off the pavement, and there's blood and brain fluid dripping out of her head. and it just paralyzed me. It's like I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And as we just drove by and went about another block down to go to the pediatric ward, and in my mind I'm crying, why didn't I say stop? Why didn't we stop and help her? But I think it was such a surreal kind of a thing that I literally was paralyzed. I couldn't even say anything. And when I saw that was on the 5th day, I told Jane, I'm done. I want to go home to Grand Junction. It just put me over the edge, because when you see all of this poverty and the suffering, and it's just so much right in your face constantly, it gets to you. You know, Jane and I have, as we've come back, it's that kind of stuff like many of you that have been in third world countries, you know what I'm talking about. And you see how people live, and you come back and you go to Walmart here or Sam's Club, and all these people buying all this stuff, and you go, oh, I don't even want to be here. It took Jane 3 days to go to the grocery store to buy us some toilet paper, and we were out. But going to an impoverished third world country like that, you just can't help but come back and be a different person. You saw the video of the kids singing to us on the porch as we drove up for the first time to the orphanage. And one of the things that I didn't know what to expect is that we're going down the street and it stops, and they honk the horn, and all of a sudden these big metal gates open in this walled, all you see is this wall, and they drive in, and there's the orphanage. That everywhere in Port-au-Prince, you see these nothing but walls and these metal gates. Because anyone that has any money to have a home, they have to put up walls and gates like that to protect themselves. Because it's just anarchy there. It's just chaos. And so the orphanage is in this little contained area with these walls around it to literally protect the kids and the people that work. And we even had an armed guard with us everywhere we went, that they hired an armed guard for us, because it's just a dangerous place. Thursday, when I was working on the sermon, I just looked on the internet, and the State Department had a warning out that was saying, don't go to Haiti. Basically, it was saying, if you're an American and you go to Haiti, you're stupid. That's my abridged version of it. But as we went into the orphanage and we began to hang out there, and whenever we would go out and drive out in Port-au-Prince, the thing before I went was, as we talked to Linda about the orphanage, I couldn't wrap my mind around, why do parents bring their kids to the orphanage and say, take my kid? I couldn't understand that, because, you know, in my mind, I would never do that to any of our kids. I mean, you'd have to kill me first before that would happen. Why would they do that? But when we saw how extreme the poverty was, and we saw the conditions that they were trying to raise their kids in and not be able to provide them with food. In fact, mothers, because their kids are crying so much for being hungry, they'll take mud and they'll add spices to it, and they'll bake the mud like mud pancakes and feed it to their kids just to curb the hunger pangs. A family can't provide any education to their kids because there's no government-sponsored education, because the government doesn't give any money to the people. And so only the people that have money can send their kids to private schools. And then no medical care, that they can't provide any assistance to their kids when there's medical needs. And so it just kind of dawned on me, it's like, that's why parents are knocking down the doors of this orphanage to bring their kids in, is because to them, it's the most loving thing to do. Because when you go into the orphanage, the one thing that you see is the kids are fed 3 meals a day. The kids get medical care, that they have a nurse on staff. The kids are given school, that they use the PACE Christian homeschool curriculum. And they're teaching the kids not only their education, but biblical truths through their homeschooling. And then they have church, and they're always singing and worshiping together with the kids. And so when we started watching and observing, the kids were healthy, and the kids were cared for, and they were incredibly clean. These kids would take 2 to 3 showers a day. We were required to, because there's no air conditioning there. They're sweating constantly, and so they really put the effort into keeping the kids clean. And I was really impressed by that. The orphanage turns away 80 kids a month of parents coming and begging them, will you please take my kid, because I can't provide anything for them. It just breaks your heart, doesn't it? But when we were there, it just dawned on me what Jesus said in John 10, verse 7. Jesus said, I tell you the truth, I am the gate for the sheep. All who ever came before me were thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved. He will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand is not the shepherd who owns the sheep. So when he sees the wolf come in, he abandons the sheep and runs away. Then the wolf attacks the flock and scatters it. The man runs away because he is a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and my sheep know me. Just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. You see, I saw this shepherd's heart in Linda Cohn, the director of the orphanage, and in Pierre, who manages the orphanage, and in Justin, who is a teacher of the kids in the orphanage. And in all of the staff, there's 100 people that work with the kids in the orphanage, that you would watch them and they love those kids. Because God has given them a shepherd's heart to protect those kids. And every time that gate would open, it was that picture of the sheepfold being opened up and closed for their own protection. You see, I really was overwhelmed of what the Lord revealed to me was this orphanage was placed there by God to provide for these kids and to be a kind of a filtering point to get these kids into loving homes so that these kids can be raised up and nurtured and given a hope of a life. And many of these kids actually have the vision that if they would be adopted into a family in the United States or in any modern country and get an education, that they have a vision to go back to Haiti and to go back and make a difference in their country. That's an amazing thing, that if you saw Haiti and you were able to come here, why would you ever want to go back? And many never do, because it's so bad. And like I said in the video, I would never go back to Haiti unless there was something like an orphanage calling us to go back. I would never go there again. So as I talked about Linda Cohn, they call her Mama Linda. And whenever they call anyone Mama or Papa in Haiti, it's a very endearing kind of a thing. So they would call Mama Jane or Papa Kirk or Knucklehead Kirk, usually what they say. But Linda is a good shepherd to these kids, that she has literally laid her life down to these kids. And the sacrifice that she makes is unbelievable, that she hasn't been paid in 6 months because the orphanage doesn't make enough to pay her, but she continues to find ways to take care of the kids and take care of her own family. I don't know how she does it. If it was me, I would have given up a long time ago. But she keeps going because God has given her that shepherd's heart for these kids. She loves these kids. They're her flock that God has given her. I heard a couple stories of some kids that were in another orphanage that got closed down because of the corruption in the orphanage. And a couple of kids, when they came back into For His Glory Outreach Orphanage, they told Linda and the staff that whenever teams from the United States would come visit and work in that orphanage, the director would dress them up and feed them 3 meals a day, and they'd work like crazy to clean the orphanage before everyone came. And then when the team would leave, it would be very common for the kids to go 2 to 3 days before they were fed another meal because of the corruption. And you just don't sense that in For His Glory Orphanage. You see the kids truly have joy. You see them hugging Linda. You see the staff hugging the kids, that there's a true sense of community and family there. So we took a team from here of 17 people. Here's a picture of our team there, I think. Is there a picture, Anthony? Yeah, there we go. There's our team with many of the kids that we're holding. This team for 8 days, literally in the heat and the stench and the sweat, just loved on the kids the whole time they were there. We had a VBS for 3 days. So while you guys were having a vacation Bible school here for a few hundred kids, we were having one there for 130 kids at the same time. So we actually had that much bigger of an impact on kids through vacation Bible school 2 weeks ago. Or was it last week? 2 weeks ago. It's all a blur to me. They helped with chores. You know that these, again, no electricity and no resources. They, for 130 kids, they hand wash all of their clothes every day. They have women that's what they do for 12 hours a day, every day, is wash laundry. So our team would go help wash laundry. They cooked over charcoal, these big pots. And it'd be really hot, as you can imagine, with the coal going as they're cooking for 130 kids plus all of the staff. 3 meals a day, and our team would help cook, do the dishes. Jane and Sheila Worth helped organize the office and put things in files in alphabetical order, because it was just chaotic in the office. And then we had a team with Diana and a woman named Beth that met us there from Michigan that were nurses, and they put all their medical files in order. And they've all put process and systems together so that when other teams come down, they know where to follow up and keep going and to keep that order. They just did a phenomenal job. Dan Worth and Greg Stevens did a bunch of maintenance and construction stuff. And then Joey and Thomas helped with some of that stuff and just played with the kids. Some of you think, well, what did you do, Kirk? I just sat, and there was this three-year-old boy. He just sat on my lap the whole week, and I just loved on him. I'm sorry, I'm just this old sap with this stuff. Alan Curry, he's an engineer. He goes down and he designed a water capturing system because they get over 100 inches